So welcome to the first episode of Life After Service, which is a podcast that will tell veteran stories of what their life has been like since they left their time in service, whether you served in the Army, whatever other branch of service you served in. I'm biased to the Army. I served in the Army. My name is Steve. Served as a 13 series in the Army for 6 years, did 2 tours to Afghanistan. We're going to be interviewing, today's guest is episode 1, like I said, is a phenomenal episode 1. This guy, I reached out to him. He came right on board, didn't hesitate to even say yes or no. And, he served in the U.S. Army, served in the Missouri Army National Guard as a Bachelor's of Science from Southwest Missouri State University.
Southeast,
sorry. Yeah. Master of Business from William Woods University. Mm-hmm. Active member of Phi Beta Sigma.
Fraternity Incorporated, yes, sir.
There you go. Retired Veteran Service Raider, which is going to be probably the most interesting topic on this as
most
far
definitely.
as the podcast. And an author now of VA Claim Success, which you can buy on Amazon and where else?
Amazon, and you go to my website, www.kmd89.com, and I'll send you a signed copy.
There you go. So, Mr. Dewayne Kimble, welcome. Thank you for coming from Apollo Beach area. Coming all the way over to Wesley Chapel to record this. I think it's going to be a phenomenal interview, something that I think we both agree veterans need to hear. So without further ado, I'll let you kind of just introduce yourself a little bit more. Hopefully I did a decent job at it.
Oh, yeah. So first, thank you for having me. Definitely appreciate the opportunity to come and be part of the first podcast of many more. So I know you're going to have a lot of success with that. As you stated, I'm a United States Army veteran and a veteran of the Missouri Army National Guard. I'm originally from Southeast Missouri, a little small town about 2.5 hours south of St. Louis. Used to live on the south side of Chicago for a few years. When I got out of the military, I went back to college, finished up my education, and went to work for a few Fortune 500 companies, Procter & Gamble, Kraft Foods, Oscar Mayer, and Tropicana orange juice. During the housing market crash, they started letting a lot of mid-level managers go, and that's how I ended up at the Department of Veterans Affairs as a ratings specialist. And I wasn't getting my benefits at the time, so I was like, okay, what do they do here besides healthcare? And so that leads me to my current business, KMD89 VA Claims Consulting. I founded it back in November of 2018. So just went up past the 5th year anniversary. We have clients all over the world: France, Germany, Japan, Africa, the Virgin Islands, Mexico, Alaska, Hawaii, and here in the continental United States. So
amazing.
Again, it's my pleasure to be here, and just thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you having it. We actually got you a little gift for coming out this way.
Okay,
I'll let you open that one, but we got you 2 in case you need a second one for a good employee or maybe your wife or something like that.
I was going to say my wife, yeah.
So hopefully you drink coffee or water or something. I don't know.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Yeah. I hope you like that.
That is awesome right there. That is awesome.
Yeah, we're going to put your full name, but I said, you know what? Let's go with the initials.
Yeah.
The other one is the same, but it just doesn't have the initials on it. So
okay, cool.
Just my gift from Pro 411, which is my company, and also the podcast Life After Service, to Dewayne for all that he does. Guys, I spent probably 5 hours or more preparing for Dewayne to come on here because I wanted to, 1, learn a little bit about him, and 2, just know what he does. And I'll tell you, what you're doing out there is phenomenal.
Appreciate
your YouTube videos, as someone that knows the VA system, someone that's worked in that realm as well, even I got stuff out of it. A lot of the information out there, as you and me know, can be either wrong or just not well put together, and the way you deliver your stuff is phenomenal. So we'll kind of jump right into the podcast, man, and what we're trying to do here. So some of the stuff you already touched on, but we just want to kind of learn about you. So, you said you grew up in Missouri.
Yep.
Tell us just briefly, what was that like?
It was a town of about 5,000 people. I was raised by my grandparents. Didn't realize that I was growing up poor until I got to college. But I would go to Chicago every summer because that's where my mom lived, and I would, go to Chicago, spend the summers. So I just got used to life outside of a small town, having that exposure to a big city like Chicago. So I knew early on that I didn't want to stay in a small town. Nothing wrong with living in a small town, but for me, I just wanted to see the world, travel, and what is the best way to do that is the military. Right around the corner from my house, they had a National Guard armory. And one morning, my grandmother, she runs in my room, she wakes me up, and she was like, hey, they're outside running. And these guys were in combat boots, the fatigues and T-shirt, and they were doing PT. They were, running. And I was like, man, I want to do that one day. And my sophomore year of high school, I decided that's what I'm going to do. But I was too young at the time. So, I think, my second semester of when I was a junior in high school, I joined the Missouri Army National Guard at the age of 17. And my mom had to sign the paperwork because I was too young. And I went to basic training between my junior and senior year. And once I graduated, I went back for my advanced initial training. I was a 12 Bravo at the time, but when I went on active duty, I was a 13 Charlie. So I think it converted to a 13 Delta. You were telling me about.
So I was a 13 Delta. I was FDC.
Yeah,
so I worked in FDC. Yep. So you guys did the same thing as a Charlie?
I was battalion FDC.
Okay, gotcha.
And the gun line, FDC with 13 Echoes.
Okay, they're 13 Bravos now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a lot has changed.
I got out in 2016. So, we both come from the artillery world. I had the luxury, I guess, of not really serving in my job. I don't know about you, right? So, I joined in 2010. I got out of AIT in October, was boots on ground in Afghanistan in December. Mm-hmm. Did a 12-month tour there, and I was a PFC at the time. So, as you know, I kind of just did what I was told. Some days we're in the FDC, some days we're on the gun line, some days we're in a tower, QRF, kind of rolling out sometimes. So, just doing a little bit of everything. But it gave me a sense of, I actually became like, I loved it. I was like, wow, this is the first year in the Army. I'm in Afghanistan. It was kind of nerve-wracking at first, but then I'm like, man, this is pretty cool. This is what they do. So I re-enlisted and then, kind of went from there. And we'll get into my stuff too. But so you see these guys running, they motivate you, join the Army. Mm-hmm. So did you go to college first, or did you just go straight out of high school into the military?
In the National Guard.
That's right. You did National Guard first,
National Guard. And then I went to college for 3 years. Okay. And I paid my own way through school. Gotcha. My grandparents, they didn't have money to send me to school. My mom, there was no college fund. So in high school, I stopped playing basketball in the 10th grade because, it wasn't a job fair, but it was like a career day, if you will, right? And what do you want to do? And they were talking about a college fund. I'm like, college fund? What's a college fund? Yeah. So I get home, I call my mom in Chicago, and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about college. They were talking about college, and do I got a college fund? She was like, no, you got to figure it out. Yeah. And that's the day I stopped playing basketball because I'm like, I got to start saving now as a sophomore, cutting grass or whatever, to trying to go to college. So I paid my own way through college, and after my third year, I ran out of money. I had already sat out of school a semester. I'm like, I don't want to sit out again. And I was going to the mall just to clear my head one day, past the recruiting station.
They'll always get you in that mall.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even make it to the mall. I just saw the recruiting station, and I pulled in there and was talking to him. And I was probably the easiest recruit that he ever had because, I took the ASVAB and I went up to St. Louis to the MEP station. And the guy say, well, with MOS, I said, I don't want to be 11 Bravo. I'm a 12 Bravo now. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be in AIT for a long time. Give me something about 5 or 6 weeks. And 13 Charlie popped up, and I was like, all right. He said, do you want me to read to you what it is? I was like, no. As long as I know the reclassification is only 6 weeks, I'm good. I can get the Fort Seal and be back home before Christmas and spend 30 days with my family, then wherever they're going to send me after that. So,
gotcha.
That's the way it went.
Kind of similar situation. I grew up on the lower end of the poverty line as well. Didn't do college, and and ended up, I actually had my first son when I was 20. And that's what really changed my life. I had to make a decision, like, I got to do something. So I joined the Army, and I went to the recruiter, and just like you, I was like, how do I get out of here? Like, now. These are the things I don't want. Everything else in between. They showed me a video of the artillery. I was like, I'll do it.
King of battle.
Yeah. So you joined the Army. What's your first duty station?
Went to Schweinfurt, Germany, Letward Barracks. That was my first duty station. And I was there 3 years. And then I PCS to Fort Hood. And I re-enlisted at Fort Hood.
Gotcha.
And that's where I separated from as well, Fort Hood.
Okay.
Fort Hood, Texas. They call it something else now. Fort Cameron. It's not called Fort Hood anymore.
Is it? I know a bunch of things changed. Even
changed,
since I got out, I know, I don't even know, can we say Fort Bragg anymore? Or I'm going to say Fort Bragg.
Yeah. I think it's like Fort Liberty or Fort Independence, something
Fort
like
Liberty.
that. I don't want to,
There's a bunch of changes, but I guess that's for another time on the podcast.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I want to touch on something, and if you don't want to touch on it, we can. I read something about you that will really show, I think, people who you are. So you grew up in Missouri, moved back and forth to Chicago. At 10th grade, decided to stop playing basketball. That's a tough thing to do as so. And I read, as a soldier, you ran into a burning house, correct?
Yeah.
Is that right? You mind touching on that a little bit?
Yeah, I was just got to Germany. I got to Germany in January, and I just recently got married. And I want to say it was April. My wife had been there maybe a month, and she was pregnant with my son.
Oh, wow.
And we were in the house, and I hear the refrigerator cut off. And I'm like, I'm not going to worry about it. I'll get with the landlord in the morning. And then I heard the radiator cut off. I'm like, wait a minute. So I'm, walking throughout the house, and I go in the furnace room, open the door, and just like this flame just like woof came at me. And I was like, oh, and I jumped back, and I thought I burned my eyebrows off because my face was like tingling, like, I thought I had got burned. So I run back in the house, I get my wife, and I'm like, hey, we got to get out. It's a fire in the boiler room. We get out, we walk around back. And by this time, the landlord's daughter that lived on the second floor, she was outside, and she was screaming. And at the time, I didn't speak any German, just, like how to say hello, order a drink at the bar or something like that. And I remember asking her, where's your kids? Natula and Michelle. I never forget their names. Last name Malos, never forget it. And she pointed towards the house. And by this time, smoke is just coming out of the house. I mean, and it's coming out hard.
Is it winter, summer?
April. So it wasn't, it wasn't cold. It was kind of cool, but not cold. And I'm looking at this door, and it's just smoke. And I remember at that particular time, a firefighter came to my 5th grade class. And now how I remember this at this particular moment in time, they said, if you ever are in a burning building and there's a lot of smoke, get out and crawl out. Because the lowest point is where you have more oxygen, right? But I'm going into the building. So I was like, if it could work to get out of the building, it could work me getting in the building to somehow get to these kids. And that's exactly what I did. I got the first child out with no problem. I held my breath. And I was afraid at this time because now it's more smoke coming out. And I don't know where the flame is. And on my way out, I was barefooted, and I could feel the floor underneath me be kind of warm. And I remember saying, if the floor is warm, then there's a fire underneath you. So I go back in, and I'm going room to room trying to find the baby. So I get to the room where the baby crib is at, and I'm like, man, cool, right? Put my hand in the baby crib, she's not there.
Oh my
so now I'm thinking, did she get out and like pass out or something like that? And I'm like, I don't know where she's at.
You probably can't see.
Couldn't see. And so by this time, I could feel my lungs start to itch. And I'm trying to hold my breath. And so as I'm coughing, I'm inhaling a little bit of smoke. And the last time I did that, more smoke came in and I just coughed and gulped a lot of smoke. And now my lungs on fire at this point. And I'm like, I got to get out of here, get a breath and come back in. So I'm feeling my way around. I feel the bed. So I knew, okay, I'm on the other side of the room. Let me jump over the bed and get out of this house. And my foot hit that baby's arm or leg. And I was like, wait a minute, that didn't feel like a pillow. And I turned around and I'm feeling, and I grabbed her and I put my hand over her mouth. Come to find out she was still asleep. And her mom had her in the bed with her.
Wow.
And I'm just inhaling the smoke. So I'm holding the baby's mouth and I run out. I'm not even crawling. I run out and her mom grabs her from me and I'm coughing. And my wife later told me, she's like, every time you cough, just smoke was just coming out. And I'm wheezing. So the German fire department gets there, right? They're asking everybody, hey, you okay? You okay? But they're not asking me, am I okay? I'm like, no. And I asked the second time, right before I went in the second time, I asked this German neighbor, I said, go in with me, because I'm like, I'm feeling like if I pass out, he could pull me out. He was like, nine. Like, no, I'm not. No. He's like, no.
Wow.
And that's what happened. So they rushed me to the emergency room and they treated me for smoke inhalation. They kept me overnight and I'm fairly new. So the EOC, staff duty officer and staff duty NCO, they didn't know where I was at. They're like, then,
failure to report.
They didn't even come and get me. My wife had to ask a neighbor that we didn't know to come and pick me up from the hospital and bring me home, my own unit. They were like, we don't know who this guy is.
That's crazy.
Because when I got to Germany, the unit was in the field. They were in Grafenwehr. And so I checked in. My supervisor never met me. They're calling out to the field. They're like, what are you calling us for? He's not here. And about a week after that, they sent me to the field.
Wow. To give you an award, anything?
Yeah, I did. I've received the Soldier's Medal for that. And it was General Shinseki. He was actually the secretary of the VA when I first started. He was the secretary of the VA when I first started, yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, what a crazy story. You had my hair standing up at one point. As a man with, I have 4 kids, mm-hmm. I can't imagine, and thank you for doing that. But it shows, the listeners that, you're not just talking, you're out there really helping people I can tell from a young age, you've been about helping people. So what made you decide, after your time in the service, when did you get out? What made that decision? What kind of led to that?
Yeah, I was going through a divorce. Well, not legally. My wife and I, we were on bad terms, and it was just always a problem. It was always something. So, being in the military, man, it's like your family do something. It's not their fault. It's your fault, And so I said, okay, it's time to get a divorce, and I didn't want to be a 13 Charlie anymore. So when I re-enlisted, I wanted to re-enlist and change my MOS. Now, mind you, I made E5 in 2.5 years. I made E6 in 4.5. So I was fast tracking because I was meeting the cutoff score because of my civilian education, right? So I'm young, 25, 26. And I'm like, man, maybe I might, try to become a ranger or something. I said, but I don't want to be no 11 Bravo. I don't want to do that. So then I was like, maybe I'll go to drill instructor school. I was like, I just need to do something that's going to keep my mind occupied where I'm not thinking about, my marriage. So, at this time, I'm running, training, just, making sure I'm, the best physical condition I could be in. And I noticed the Army start selecting people to go to recruiting school. So I was like, I'm not volunteering for that. I don't want to do that. And we had a mandatory meeting one time in one of the theaters, and his E8 come down and talked about recruiting and all this other stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not doing that. Came down on orders for recruiting duty. And all the dreams that I had to do other things in the military, I'm like, I'm done. And abruptly, I got out just that quick. And I was up for re-enlistment. And I didn't re-enlist
to avoid,
because I knew if I did, I would have been stuck.
Yeah.
So when there was no way out, they was like, nope, you have to go. You can't, you can't go to, become a DI. You can't go to airborne school. You're not going to get accepted, for like orientation or selection. No, nothing. And I'm like, with a commercial live, I'm not being able to be all that I can be, so how am I going to go out there and try and convince other people they can be all they can be? And in a matter of minutes, that made the decision, okay, I got about 8 months left on my enlistment. Actually, when I made the decision, I was in BNOC.
Really?
I was in BNOC. I was in BNOC, yeah.
Wow. And so BNOC, for those, the younger crowd, is a WLC for us, Warrior Leaders Course now.
Oh, okay.
And it could have changed since 2016, so maybe it's different. I went to WLC I went to WLC as a specialist. Like yourself, I made E5 in 2.5 years myself.
Okay.
I did back-to-back deployments, so that kind of helps, and I was a PT stud.
Yeah.
In the Army, if you can do PT and you're in a combat unit, you're usually pretty good. So, what year was this? What year did you get out?
I got out November 97.
November 97. So it was prior to invasion Iraq, all that good stuff. What was your transition like? Like going back, you had done 6 years at this time almost. What was going from 6 years of active duty military time to now going back to, did you go back home?
Yeah, I went back to the town. I went back and enrolled in the college that I started.
Okay. So now you go back, you're going to finish off. But what was that transition like? If you could and that's really what this podcast is about, right? Like showing that transition and what veterans went through from their time of active service, whether it was 4 years, 6 years, 20 years, and going back to that reintegration of civilian life and what it's like. So what was it like for you?
It was not hard.
No?
It was because I started to rebel as a staff sergeant right before I got out. And it was crazy because while at BNOC, my sergeant major threatened me that if I didn't take a battalion FDC chief position at this other field artillery unit, I would have to sign a deck statement. And I know if you sign a deck statement, you never get promoted to E7. It'd be very hard, And I'm like, well, I'm in BNOC and I'm working with a computer system that we don't work with at Fort Hood. I don't know when you were in, we use AFATAS.
Yep.
At Fort Hood. But at Fort Sill, they use something totally different. And in Germany, it was something totally different. So I had no clue. So I'm trying to figure out how to set up phase lines and, and all this stuff in there and how just to do it because it's a totally different computer system, right? And he's, having another junior E5 called me, asking me about, am I going to take this position? They need to know. And I'm like, you'll find out when I get back. And so it kind of pissed me off a little bit. So I get to the new unit and I never meet the sergeant major. I'm there probably about 5 months and never meet the sergeant major. Had a really cool first sergeant. The commander I didn't too much care for. But I was just like, I didn't feel I really belong, maybe because I was in the other unit, about 2.5 years or something like that. So I knew a lot of people and stuff like that. And so when I decided to get out, nobody knew. Even the captain, the FDC officer, he didn't know. He had just wrote my NCOER, had no clue I was getting it because I didn't tell anybody. I wouldn't like friends with anybody in that unit. So you know, and we were going on training. They signed us up to go on a training mission to Saudi Arabia. And I said, I'm not going over there. I said, they said, why? I said, because it's a training mission. I don't get any bullets. If I'm going to go over there, I'm going to fight. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fight. I'm not going to go over there. We can go to Fort Irwin, California, go out here in the country desert here in Texas and do that training. We're going over there to Saudi Arabia for the train. I don't want to go over there for training. I'm like, am I going to be able to fight? No, it's not. No, I don't want to do it. So, and then this old recruiter thing came up, and they were like, you may have to put somebody else in your place. And I'm like, y'all are serious about this recruit. So I started to grow my hair out a little bit before I went to BNOT. And a funny story about that, I get to BNOT. When you get to any leadership school, you got that PT test, like first thing, first day, you got the PT test, right? So I go in there and we sign in. And I take my cap off. We wore the black skull caps, right? And the staff sergeant first class says, we need to measure his hair. And it wasn't really like a fro. I just had the edges tapered to make it appear. And he went and got a ruler and was like, we got to make sure it's not 2 inches. If not, you're going to have to get a haircut or we're going to send you home. I'm like, all right, let's measure it. I already knew because I measured it before I left, And so I get back to that unit, going through all that other stuff, man. And then the whole Saudi thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm out. So my transition, I had a job before I left the service. I went on the interview, took a long weekend, gave myself a Friday off, drove up Missouri, interviewed, came back, and I was clearing quarters. And so I had a job. So between the time I was on terminal leave and the time I left Fort Hood and the time I started my first day of work, I was off like 30 days.
Oh, wow.
So I was traveling a little bit with my grandmother and my uncle and a cousin of mine. And I was getting myself enrolling in school for the following semester. So I had a job lined up. And then 2 months later, I started school to finish up. So it was, for me, only thing, I didn't want to work overtime because, in the
just
military,
left service.
It's like you could work 2 hours one day, the next day you could work 18 hours. So I'm like, I don't want to work overtime, and if I do, I want to get paid for it.
Yeah.
And went to work for Procter and Gamble, and grew my hair out even more, and grew my goatee out, and I always made sure I slept in on my days off.
Because you couldn't do it.
Exactly.
See, a lot of people don't realize, like when you're in the military, like your day to day, once you're out of training, it is kind of ran like the civilian world, but you don't know when your day ends, right? And that was the biggest thing for me. Like that, when I got towards that, after that 4 or 5 year mark, when I got to my last duty station, I was kind of tired. Like that never knowing, like, are we getting off at noon? Mm-hmm. Are we getting off at 5? Like you don't know. And that it weighs on your mental. That alone, right? Not considering everything else that goes on, but like just the never knowing what's going to happen, especially when you have a family. So I completely feel that. But